it's less about money now, and it's more about like the projects I'm able to like bring in, the type of things I'm able to work on, the relationships that I'm building. Money will come and go, right? But the relationships that I'm building now, early in my career, are going to last me my entire career. And
Welcome to Creative Chutzpah. My name is Leonard Samuels. I'll be co-hosting with Rico Nasol, where we'll be interviewing artists and business owners in the world of creative. We hope you enjoy.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the first episode in season 1 of Creative Chutzpah. Yeah. I'm your host, Rico Nasol, and Leonard Samuels. And today we have Joseph Emde. He is a theatrical producer at Big Picture Entertainment. Joseph, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot. Happy to be here.
And we are going to jump right in. And first, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey as a creative. How did you get to where you are?
Yeah, so I've been a theatrical producer for about a decade. My background is here at Big Picture Entertainment. I've been doing basically movie trailers and theatrical advertisement, like I said, for over a decade. Before that, I went to the University of San Francisco with hopes of going to law school and doing a kind of a more straight-laced career. And I sort of fell into this, and my brother, who was an editor at the time, hooked me up with an internship here at Big Picture, and never looked back. So I cut my teeth here, and I'm producing now, and it's been great.
Nice. That's I've never heard someone do quite that, going to law school or somewhere for a law and then pivoting into creative. So I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more later. But first I want to ask, like, what was it about creative? And is there a moment in your life where you're like, that's what I want to do? Like, could be a movie, a museum, something.
Yeah, I think I've always been a storyteller. I like to talk. I like to talk with people. And
that's where the lawyer part comes in, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. That's sort of, I think, my parents were sort of like, oh, that sounds great. And you're argumentative. This will be great. But as I kind of, went to college and started to kind of experiment with who I was and the types of things that I was interested in, I've always been a big film guy. I've always liked cinema and the medium of film. And when I found an opportunity to sort of really push my creative and the things that I could just ideate on and the problems that I could solve just using my tastes and my talents, and that intersected with film, I was like, oh, wow, this is a whole new world. This is really exciting. And then that kind of gave me the push and the drive to make that like hard left turn and say, you know what, maybe law school isn't what I want to do. The creative realm is something that is kind of what I'm destined for. So here I am.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And what would you say is your mission? Like, what do you try to accomplish with your creative? Like, what is it that you wanted to? And you said you love storytelling. But if I were to ask you, like, what is your personal mission when it comes to creative? What would you say?
I guess my personal mission in terms of creative would be collaboration. I'm a big believer in that great ideas can come from anywhere, and big thoughts, big ideas can come from just people saying one thing and it leading to another. So for me, I try to balance, including people and including opinions and ideas and getting that sort of texture in the room when it comes to like ideating, working through a problem creatively. And then also knowing when to kind of pick a lane and stick with it and kind of be like, all right, this is the path forward. This is going to get us the best product. And that can sometimes be a balance, right?
Can I piggyback on top of that? How do you feel about when you're giving those directions in the collaboration? Because obviously, they gotta meet your needs and the client needs. So where does that leadership part come in?
I think it's, like I said, I think it's a balance, and I think it's about knowing your team and also just understanding that like everybody's trying to get to the same goal. So right. What is the goal? Does everybody know, here's where we're trying to go. How do we get there as quickly and expediently as possible with all the members of the team on the bus? And sometimes you run into that person that's really adamant about their way and their way forward. And, sometimes there's room to negotiate, and other times there's just the business aspects of like, we gotta cross the finish line, and this is how we do it.
Yeah, that's great. And you've been doing this for a long time, so I would love to hear over time, right? You've been doing this for 10 plus years. How has that changed? How has that evolved? Because entertainment is a very old industry. It's been around for a very long time, and it's gone through its own evolutions and things like that. So how has it been? How has collaboration and maybe just the creative process been from when you started to where it is today?
That's a big question. There's a couple different ways to attack that. I think the easiest one to talk about is sort of the generational differences. I'm in that point in my career where I've been in over a decade. I've spent a lot of time growing in this industry with people that have come before me and people who are now sort of emerging and just starting out their careers. And so there's definitely a difference, I think, in problem solving and thought process that comes between different types of people. I think there's different kinds of work ethics. So I've definitely seen that as one of the biggest changes. I would say in the last, even before the pandemic, I would say in the last 5 years, that was already starting to kind of be a thing where, Gen Z and millennials have a different perspective than
always fighting, but we're just so the same. We're just so the same.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're cut from the same cloth for sure. But all of my millennial partners are always like, these Gen Z guys don't know, they don't want to work. They have boundaries. They have healthy boundaries. That's
healthy boundaries. That's a great way to put it. Yes.
Mm-hmm. But boundaries, sometimes you got to work around the boundaries, and some people are more open to that than others, I'll say.
Yeah. Can I say on top of that, is there some tips that you would give to new up and comers that are in their first 5 years of getting into this business? Yes, it's going to probably fall into the Gen Z most likely, but yeah, just people that are just starting to get into this, business at later stages of their life. Is there anything that you would tell them as they move into it?
Well, I think the one thing I keep hearing a lot these days is fail fast, which I think is great advice. It's fail fast, try things. If it doesn't seem to be working, just tuck, roll, recover. Don't spend too much time on it. There's always, I think, a healthy space for postmortems, when things aren't working. But don't belabor over, little things as you're starting out. I think in terms of synergy, and like getting a whole company together, that's tough. That's a really hard thing to do. You have a lot of different people, you have a lot of different personalities, you have different departments doing different things. There's so many moving parts. I think it's easy to get overwhelmed. I think it's really easy to want to try to solve everything immediately and then get the ship back to like tip top running shape. Everything is smooth. I don't think that's realistic, and it's also not practical, to sum it up, I guess I would say, be flexible, learn to fail. And, it's like, there's going to be tough times. There's going to be stressful times. But I think as you're sort of building your rapport with your team, the stronger that is too, the more flex you'll have, the more nimble your company will be, because there's that inherent trust, right?
Yeah. There's this, when you say fail fast, right, there's this, and I came up the non-traditional route. I came up through tech into entertainment, and there's this stigma almost with high performers that we don't celebrate wins well. And I want to see how you handle it, because it's true, you want to fail fast, and you want, like, postmortems are a thing that like a lot of people do, but you hear more about postmortems, what could get better, like all those things, instead of like post celebrations.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me what it's like for you, because high performers tend to like glance past the wins and then focus on the losses. So how do you provide that balance, even in your career or with collaborators you're working with, where you're equally celebrating, but also recognizing where you can get better?
Yeah, I think particularly in creative, there is a drive to win. Like, I think all of us really want that celebration, and I think it's very easy for the celebration to be commonplace, right? Like that's my job. That's what I'm supposed to do. Is I'm supposed to win. So let's move on to the next one. Versus, it's easy to obsess about like a loss that you weren't expecting, or if you've been, on a campaign for a long time and fighting and putting in the hours, and then it doesn't work out. Those are the ones you want to obsess about, right? But in terms of celebrating and wins, I think you're right. I think we focus a little bit more on like popping the champagne and like, yeah, we did it, cool, instead of being like, how that was great. How do we replicate that? It was really easy. What went well? What do we do differently in the pipeline this time that just made it easy and made it so that we weren't here till 4 a.m. every night, Yeah, so I think that's sort of a like, if it's not broken, don't fix it kind of habit, right? Like, if you've won something, you've done everything correctly, so you don't need to reflect, so to speak. But it's not true, because you can reflect on all the things that you did well. Whether it's like great margins, or if it's just we didn't stay up super late, or we walked away not feeling totally gassed from this campaign. Can't wait for the next one. I hope there's a sequel.
Yeah. And how do you feel, just to keep going into that, how do you feel about giving everybody a voice? Because there are newcomers that come into it and they might have a bunch of opinions and everybody's opinionated. Do you just try to go through like the keys of command and say like, oh, well, I'll talk to the art director, or I'll talk to this person? Or are you more of like, I want to say communal, but everybody get into the room and ask everybody their opinions? How do you do that process?
I think I'll answer by saying it's situational.
Okay.
When we got to go and there's deadlines and things to do, I would definitely focus more on getting the job done, the production, going straight to the people that can help me out. But in terms of thinking from a 30,000 foot view, when you're bringing in, more junior people into the room, let's just say, younger people in their careers who are coming into the room, they may not have the expertise or, the experience to solve the problem, but they're going to be learning when they're in the room. So even if they're like, well, what if we paint it green? And we're like, we're not going to paint this thing green. It's not going to work, but thanks. Then they'll know, maybe I shouldn't blurt out that next time,
Yeah, it goes both ways. Now they're validated, but also they get a learning experience at the same time.
Exactly. And I think that's sort of a sliding into home. You might get some sand in your shorts, you might get tagged out, but you might win. So you got to go for it. And I think it's short-sighted to really just focus on your rising stars or your leadership or whomever, like the people that you trust.
Short-sighted, 100%. Yeah.
In terms of like, I think for us working in, I'll speak for myself. I work for a smaller creative agency, not like a large corporate entity. So when we're thinking about 5-10 years down the road, we're trying to build internally and grow our teams. We want to have strong foundations. And sometimes that's about like kind of nurturing individuals in departments, supporting the whole department, but also realizing like, hey, this person over here is excelling in these areas, but we got to help them out over here. 5 years down the line, that help and that attention might, make a really, really stellar employee who's seasoned and like, oh yeah, I'm actually not nervous about staying over the weekend and, rendering things for 5 hours. I can do that. And been there before. Yeah.
So taking it back a little bit, and that was, thank you for walking us through that. Because, things have changed a lot, but looking back at your journey, what did success look like when you started? And what does success look like now for you 10 years in?
10 years in, I think when I first started out, success was twofold. It was about kind of climbing the ladder, and just every time I hit a rung or like got like a pay bump, that's what success looked like. It was like very tangible traction and sort of like moving forward. And at a certain point, you kind of stop hitting those rungs. And for me as a producer, I'm just a producer now, and I've hit the sort of the top of my ladder for rungs to climb. But success also has it's less about money now, and it's more about like the projects I'm able to like bring in, the type of things I'm able to work on, the relationships that I'm building. Money will come and go, right? But the relationships that I'm building now, early in my career, are going to last me my entire career. And even if I switch from, one part of the industry to another, the more relationships I build and maintain, the more friends I'm going to have, the more opportunities I'm going to have. So to sum it up, I guess I would say like it used to be just like my own personal advancement. That's what success was. And now I think with time and space, and also having experienced losses and defeats along the way, like I think those relationships are the part of the success that really stand the test of time.
Nice. And with the amount of time that you put in, we're gonna get serious for a moment. We love everything, but it's also how important has been diversity in your profession, in the creative field? Because I can speak on behalf of myself, I'm sure Rico can as well. There's not a lot of people that look like us in a lot of the departments, but we are coming in more and more, which is fantastic. We understand that studios want to work with us. We understand that agencies want to work more with us. We're getting more opportunities. How has it been for you getting to work with more diversity and have more come in?
I mean, I think it's first of all, I think diversity is essential to creative. I think it's one of those things that when we talk about people in a room, the more perspectives and lived experiences that are in that room, the sharper the ideas are going to be, because you have different perspectives, different angles to kind of cut in and figure out, okay, what are we trying to do? Like, what is the objective? And, in terms of trailers, I can just speak to, we have different quadrants we're trying to hit. It's like young males, young females, this and that. Every once in a while we get into a place where we talk about diversity, and I'll talk about like Get Out, for example. Get Out was such an important film. And I remember for me, I was hanging out in a bar and with some friends, and another guy came up to me, and he was a black fella, and he was like, hey, I just saw Get Out. I really want to talk to somebody about it. And I was like, oh yeah, I saw it last weekend. It was really amazing. And he kind of broke it down for me a little bit more than, oh, this is just a cool horror movie. Like, let's talk about, this is why I kind of move through the world the way I do. And that blew my mind. And just that lived experience of like, here's my perspective on something that totally over my head really showed me that creative is that medium. It is an art form. It is something that allows all of us to express not only where we're coming from and what we're feeling, what makes us who we are, but it allows us to showcase that and present it to other people in a way that, I don't know how to do it with words, so let me try it this way. And sometimes that hits so much more profoundly. And I've been fortunate enough to work on a lot of diverse teams, here at Big Picture and beyond. And, it's one of those things where at the end of the day, it's about people, right? Everything we're doing, we're selling to people. We're working with people. We're trying to figure out people. And I think diversity it's about people, right? And it's about having different types of people that can kind of all share that opinion, and show you different, it's like circumspection. It's different viewpoints of the same thing.
Yeah, I love that example you gave of that story with someone coming up to you with Get Out, because I think diversity is even more than just like having representation in the room, right? But it's also about having these stories be told, right? Because one of the things that I would tell my team at Netflix is, what other medium, other platform can you tell stories, global stories, right? Where somebody in Brazil can learn about a family in Africa, or a family in Thailand can learn about, climate change in another country, right? Like, what other platform can tell those stories? So so glad you brought that up, because those stories need to be told, and being part of a global society is understanding those different perspectives and what it's like to live in someone else's shoes. So that's great that like diversity is starting to make its way into the teams, but it's also amazing that diversity is making into the stories that we tell and how we tell them. So that example of Get Out is amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, and I wanted to get into. We have a few more questions here, but with that, what is one piece of advice? Like, you've been here in the industry for a long time, and the perspective you shared so far with us has been great. Knowing those things, what piece of advice would you give for someone who is trying to get into the creative field, and wanting to, or they're either in the creative field and wanting to know how to grow and be better at their craft?
Oh yeah, that growing is important. The growing pains, yeah.
Yeah, I think burnout, right? Burnout is a real thing. It is a monster that is lurking around every corner. And I think my advice to young, excuse me, young people coming into the creative space, into entertainment, expect long hours, but beware the burnout, and pay attention to how you're feeling. And, when you start to like resent the work, you kind of have to pivot a little bit and be like, okay, wait, I'm not in a good headspace. Like, how do I rectify this? Do I have to step away from the project? Can I hit up my manager and just be like, hey, can I take like 40 minutes to just go take a walk and like clear my head? Because if I have to look at this for another 5 minutes, I'm going to lose it. So I would say like longevity and fighting burnout is ultimately one of those things that should always be a constant practice. Something that Leonard and I were talking about that he really appreciated was I have this saying, and I really like alliteration. I think it's fun. But I try to pick up positive pebbles and not store somber stones. And especially throughout my day, it's really easy for someone like me who's like probably undiagnosed ADHD and, just a millennial and very busy and taking too much stuff on. Like, I would pick up these like annoying rocks of just like, oh, I forgot my wallet at home, this, that, the other. And I occupy myself, with these big things versus I had a really good cup of coffee this morning and that was really nice. And it's a tiny little pebble that I can just pluck into my pocket and think about that throughout the day. And I can collect those throughout the day, whether it's, my dog gave me a big kiss this morning and it woke me up, or, I saw a cloud that reminded me of, a car I used to drive, like whatever those things are, the more you can kind of have those things and hold on to those things throughout the day and ultimately throughout the week, the month, so on and so forth, you end up with just lots of cool gravel to play with, versus just these big chunky things that are going to weigh you down and make it harder to fight that burnout.
Yeah, I'm going to comment on top of that. That's such a visual intake of mental health awareness that I personally, that's why I gravitated. We're in marketing.
It's here.
It really hit me in terms of that's such outside thinking of having something that's physical and saying like, oh, my day was shit. And then you look at it and you have like, oh, I collected like 3 rocks today. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was, And with that said, can you speak to how important mental health is in your profession?
Essential. You cannot survive. I'll just speak broadly to entertainment. Mm-hmm. You cannot survive entertainment with a thin skin. And
no, you cannot.
Yeah, just like if there's too much competition, there's too much pressure, there's too many people who are like, I'm going to get mine. And I get that. We're all out here hustling, especially, here in Los Angeles. You got to be busy, even if you're like a surfer dude, you got a day job, you got to be running around getting the papers. So in terms of like regulating mental health, which is something like I'm not great at, and I still am trying to figure out how to do it. I think you have to identify what is most important to you in your daily life. What does that look like? And how do you maintain and support that, whether it's like, I want to be better at not flipping out when things go crazy at work. Again, just trying to make it a little practice, giving yourself the grace and the space to understand that you're a human under a lot of pressure. There's another human who's also probably under just as much, if not more pressure on the other side, that needs their thing now. It's going to be okay. You will get through it.
Yes, it will be okay. Is the hard part to know.
Yeah, but I think in terms of mental health, it's like, I guess the key, the secret is knowing that you'll be okay, and whatever it takes to remind yourself that you're going to be okay, you are safe, all things are good, no one's going to, expire if we miss our deadline, you need to be able to do that, or else you won't, you'll get burnt out. Like, that's what I was saying earlier, burnout is real, and it sneaks up on you. And then I know for me, sometimes I just think it's normal, and then I sort of wake up to, like, I don't have to be this stressed out, I don't have to be this tired. If I just change the way I'm looking at things, or change the way I'm attacking this project, doesn't necessarily mean it changes who I am or the way I do things, but acutely I'm feeling a certain way. Now I have to address it, right?
Yeah, you had a lot of gold in there about, one, it doesn't change who you are, right? Like, you're still you. And then a couple other things is really normalizing, I think, is something that's been terrible. We normalize this stress, like, oh, this is just how it is, right? And so we need to get past that stage of normalizing, and, like you said, give yourself space and grace. And then also thinking about another thing you said is, like, what is the worst thing that will happen, and start to, like, really be aware of what narrative you may be telling yourself, right? Like, are we curing cancer? No. Is someone going to die if this doesn't happen? No. Yeah, maybe someone might get really pissed off. But what ultimately is going to happen? And am I okay with that happening? If not, then what do I deprioritize to make sure to prioritize this? So, yeah.
Well, something that I also wanted to mention was, I think you can hold two things at the same time, right? Like, you can live in gratitude and really appreciate the fact that you have a job, you have employment, like you have something to do, but you can also say, this sucks. I'm happy right now, and I'm in a state of discomfort. Two things can be true, and
two things can be true.
And I think that's the hard part, right? Is knowing when you have to really put your nose to the grindstone and just kind of suck it up and just grit and go. And then knowing when to pull the ripcord and be like, nope, I'm not going to do that anymore. This is not good for me. I got to take a break. It's tough. It's tough to know when to do that. But again, I think you can be grateful for your job, but also stick up for yourself, right?
Absolutely. You don't have to be a doormat, right? And ultimately, it's what is the most important thing to you, and what are you trying to get out of it, right? So if you know that this grind, you don't grind forever. There's, like, gaps. So, like, you'll have a time where I'll be down. Maybe it's like a week or a few days, but at least I'll be downtime. But then asking yourself, what am I doing this for? Like, what is this in service of? Is that important enough to you? Are you trying to continue to move up the ladder and, become have this bigger title, bigger scope, bigger responsibility? Or is it you like to tell stories, and then you start to ask yourself, are there other ways I can tell stories and do this thing that's important to me? And do I need to do these things? And I think that's the one thing earlier in my career, I didn't really stop to ask myself, like, what am I doing, and what am I doing it for? And I almost went down. I don't want to say this is going to sound bad. It sounds privileged, and I recognize that. But, I almost went 20 years in my entire career just because that's what people expected out of me.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I was a creative from the beginning, and I just kept progressing. People get like, here, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this, and handing me stuff. And I never really stopped until the first year to say, this isn't what I want to do anymore.
Yeah, it's so easy to kind of lose yourself, particularly because I think, I'll speak from an American perspective, where we're on this conveyor belt of education to sort of like advance. And then you arrive, post-grad, whether it's undergraduate or higher education. And then there's now what? and it's like, go, you have debt to pay off, go. Like you're going to get your life together. Now it's time. And there isn't a whole lot of wiggle room in there to be like, well, what do I want? It's like, there doesn't matter. There's bills to pay. There's things to do. It's easy to lose yourself there. And I think the positive reinforcement of getting more responsibility, getting more money, all of those things, it just keeps you motivated, and it can definitely just steer you down one track. But I think it is really important. And I think we all kind of learn and arrive at a certain point and place in our career where you think, is this what I want? Is this a reflection of me? Does that matter? And is this fulfilling? What does it mean? It's just questions.
Right.
I guess that's a midlife crisis. I think I've had 7 by now, and I'm about to be 34. So
still young.
Yeah.
So we got a couple more fun questions because we're about out of time.
Mm-hmm.
The first one I ask you is, what is a guilty pleasure of yours that either people don't know about you or would be surprised to find out?
Guilty pleasure. My fiance and I watch a lot of RuPaul's Drag Race.
Nice.
So I grew up in San Francisco, so we go to a lot of drag shows. We have a lot of friends who are drag performers, and I'm just kind of like the cis hetero white guy, in the room, just like, yeah, this is awesome. And they're like, why are you here? I'm like, have you seen this? This is hilarious. This is awesome. This is like, I can't do that. You can't do that.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. So people usually are like, oh, wow, you're into drag. And I'm like, yeah, it's fun.
Plus you come out with more confidence.
True. I mean, the strength that these people have up on stage, it just blows my mind every time. So
nice. I'm from the Bay Area too. We should go see one because I enjoy that also.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last question is, how can people get in touch with you? And if they do get in touch, are you open to, helping people out if they have questions and things like that?
Yeah.
No, say absolutely not helping anybody.
No. No, like I said, I'm a big collaborator, and, I myself have benefited from, knowing certain people and having people open doors for me and reach their hand out and say, hey, let me give you a hand. So I'm always open to answering questions. So you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's probably the best place to grab me. Joseph Emde is my last name, EMDE. It's a weird one, but
medical doctor, easy to remember.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we'll put out any links that you want to share in the show notes. So if you're listening, you can grab them there.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Any last questions, Leonard?
No, I think you got the chutzpah, man. You nailed it. Yeah.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
It takes chutzpah to be creative. So
it definitely does, and you gotta dig deep, and all that, like, believe in yourself, never give up stuff. It's good stuff. It actually works if you can engage it and push yourself. And sometimes in the creative process, you end up with something that you're not the most proud of, but you got to just suck it up and be like, you know what? Hard work went into this.
Out there. It's painful.
Macaroni drawing.
Yeah.
I worked really hard on this. Put it on the fridge, damn it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, on that note,
for coming.
Yeah, thank you, Joseph, for taking the time to chat with us today.
Of course,
like I said, we'll get stuff into the show notes for you. And if you want to reach out to Joseph, hit him up on LinkedIn. You can also hit up Leonard. You can also hit me up. We're available anytime you want to ask any questions. No holds barred. And this has been an episode of Creative Chutzpah, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for listening. Take care.
Thank you for watching Creative Chutzpah. Hope you enjoyed it. I think you did. I saw a few smiles over there. All right. And make sure you turn into Rico Nasol's Creative Leadership with Heart. All right. He's pretty good. Okay. Give him a chance too. All right. And we'll see you next time. And make sure you nosh on something. You're too skinny. Get out there and eat. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day.